So David, thank you very much for joining us in the David Attenborough building. Once again, it's a real pleasure to have you here at the epicentre of the Cambridge Conservation Initiative. I will never forget some of your previous visits to the building for our Earth Optimism events, for the Masters in Conservation Leadership, and for our Art, Science and Conservation programme. I'm sure you recall Jonathan Kingdom turning up and singing an ode to you as part of opening an exhibition. So that was fabulous.
Yeah, unforgettable.
But what I remember most, actually, is two things. One is when you came and we were refurbishing the building, so it was still a building site. We went down into what was to be the atrium for this building, right at the centre of the CCI space, and there was a great big gap in the 25-metre wall of this atrium, and you said, what's that? And I explained that it was going to be a green wall, a 25-metre green wall that was going to have plants representing the sort of conservation work that goes on in the building or around the global community that is the Cambridge Conservation Initiative. And you looked up and said, how on earth is it going to be maintained? To which I was able to point to a rack along the top with some hooks, because they were going to abseil down the wall to maintain it. And you said, oh, that sounds like fun. So I rather bravely and or perhaps foolishly said, how about abseiling down that to open the building? And you said, what a lovely idea.
Quite right.
And then in 2018, when we opened the David Attenborough building, you did indeed abseil down it. And it just, that bravery, that adventurous spirit that you were prepared to do that, I think is sort of what's galvanised so many people in this Cambridge Conservation Initiative to think boldly, think bravely, and so thank you.
Thank you very much.
I just wanted to sort of start by saying that. So as you know, David, because you were involved from the very beginning, the Cambridge Conservation Initiative was created, I think it was in 2008, when the University of Cambridge and this cluster of conservation charities that have a strong presence in Cambridge decided they wanted to come together and scale up their impact in terms of the conservation of the natural world and particularly biodiversity. You very kindly agreed to become a patron of CCI, and I just wondered what it was that for you was the reason you were prepared to do that.
The reason was that here is an institution, a charitable institution concerned with an issue which matters greatly to me, but based right in the centre of intellectual life, of scientific life, where of course there are people concerned with animals and plants, but there's more to in the intellectual aspect of the world than that. We have to know about humanity, we have to know about politics, you have to know about financial things. All those things are concentrated here in a great university. And that seems to me to make CCI unique, because it's involved, it is a university-wide institution. And it has disciplines and intellectual attitudes and intellectual inheritance which can only come from a great university where there are decades and centuries of intellectual research. So that gives CCI an enormous cachet. You know that it is solidly based in insight and knowledge, and that seems to me to be such a marvellous aspect that makes me very proud indeed that I'm involved in it in any way at all.
And from your numerous visits to CCI since you became patron and helped us create the whole concept in a sense in the first place, are there things that have really struck you that we are doing, that the Cambridge Conservation Initiative has been doing really well, or that were surprises to you?
I suppose I wasn't quite prepared for the wide range of geographically of people who come to the CCCI. I suppose had I thought about it, I would have realised that they would all be young and enthusiastic. But they certainly are, And it gives such an exhilarating tingle to this institution that there are young people at the forefront of action for conservation who are intellectually engaged with huge enthusiasm. And to meet such people is such a huge encouragement, so exciting. It's a thrill to come every time.
So in your latest, or one of your latest documentaries and books, David, A Life on Our Planet, what you call your witness statement and a vision for the future, you talk about the threats that humanity poses to all life on Earth. And I was just interested in, from your personal perspective, why does biodiversity matter to you?
Well, I suppose there are two aspects to it, aren't there? There's the emotional one and there's the intellectual one. The intellectual one is that if you know anything at all about natural history, you'll read, you understand the interconnectivity, the way that everything is connected with one another, and that if you're going to solve the world's problems, you have to deal with the whole aspect. And so your scientific insight, if that's what one has, tells you that you have to be looking across the whole perspective, the whole width of the panorama. But of course the other thing is that you know in your bones that what brings you joy is the natural world, is that moment when you see birds, monkeys, whatever, doing things that you find absolutely joyous. I mean, the moments of sheer delight that come to you as a naturalist when you suddenly are aware of something complex going on in the natural world, which delights you. And it's that delight in a kind of basic sense which involves me in the natural history. Of course, intellectually, I know it's important, but also it's joyous. It's one of the most rewarding things in your intellectual life. So there are two things, really. Those are they.
So for many years, I sensed you did a remarkable job of sharing on radio and then on film the wonders of the natural world. Its diversity, its complexity, how it worked and so on, and you continue to do that. But I get the sense that in the last, I don't know whether it's 10, 15 years, you have felt there's been a slight change of emphasis in pushing and promoting people to take action to actually prevent the loss of the natural world.
Yes.
Am I correct? And if so, why?
Well, yes, you are. But I was asked by the BBC to make a programme to mark the end of the last millennium and to welcome the beginning of the new one. And I chose to end it on Easter Island. And I looked at the camera, the end sequence, I looked at the camera and said, this Easter Island is what happens if you overrun an ecosystem beyond endurance. It collapses and it's a disaster. And we now realize that it's not just an island. Humanity, the whole planet, can learn from that. And if we are to deal with it, it's going to require a revolution in every aspect of our lives, politically, socially, financially, from every point of view. Nobody said he's preaching revolutionary change, social change. But of course, that's what I was talking about. Now, that was the year 2000, January, or it went out, I think. Well, that was 21 years ago. And now we're seeing it's come true.
Yes, yes, no, absolutely.
One of the things that's happened in the world is that in zoological insights have never been more widely spread throughout the world and throughout populations and throughout ages than they are now. They can turn on the television and see these extraordinary things. To see breeding flamingos on the salt lakes of East Africa, I mean, what a fantastic privilege. But now everybody has seen it, can be aware of those sort of things, and of what's happening in the Antarctic, and of what's happening in the centre of the Congo, and of what's happening in the north of Scotland. I mean, it is just extraordinary. And so the human population has a vision of the world and its problems as well as its excitements that has never been there in the whole of history. And it is for the first time that there is a possibility to get a global view. And it is the first time when a global view is absolutely essential to the future of the globe. It's never been like that before. And of course, the important thing is that now international agreements are no more important than they have ever been, because the disasters which are looming right on the horizon now, and we can see them only too clearly, can only be averted if, in fact, the whole of the human race, all nations, are getting together and joining to solve them in the spirit of the world and not the spirit of individual nations.
Do you still really think we have the time and opportunity to make a difference?
I think we have no option. I think speculating as to how great a responsibility we have or small a responsibility is neither here nor there. The writing is on the wall. It is legible to everybody. And we could only just desperately hope that its very clarity will make everybody realize the time has come for action and agreement.
I think you have been an incredible voice for nature, and your ability to share the wonders of the natural world is of incredible value and importance for conserving it for the future.
Well,
so
if that were true,
deeply grateful to you, David.
If that were true, I am truly happy. Thank you.